In this tutorial, you're gonna see a very important command when you have to do a little bit more sophisticated modeling in SIMIO, which are lookup tables. We're going to use an example from a factory which is producing different types of gas cylinders. For instance, one filled with oxygen and one with nitrogen. So we drag and drop a source from the left as well as a model entity that we call gas cylinder. And now we have two stations. Server 1 is dedicated to filling oxygen in the gas cylinder, and server number 2 is dedicated to filling nitrogen. And these gases must be refrigerated before they move towards the next station. So for now we connect the source to the first server with a path, as well as the source to the second server. So interestingly, oxygen must be refrigerated for exactly 5 minutes before being moved forward, and nitrogen for 7 minutes. So one approach could be, for instance, to add a server and say wait 5 minutes for oxygen and wait 7 minutes for nitrogen. But we lose a little bit of detail if we do like that, if we do like on screen where we set this server, because in a real factory, in a digital twin of a factory, we would actually have a rack, a shelf, where we put things on. And if a shelf is not available, we cannot put things on, very simply. So there are extra libraries in SIMIO that can be used in order to develop digital twins of manufacturing processes that are more detailed than just using servers. And one of these is the rack. So this is going to be our refrigerator in this case. The rack is a storage location which is capacity constrained. So we are going to direct oxygen and nitrogen filled gas cylinders to the rack. And then after an oxygen cylinder, for instance, waits 5 minutes, this is moved into the sink, and this is the same for nitrogen after 7 minutes. So the rack has particular properties. It has a number of shelves, and could be like 3 shelves, and a shelf capacity, it could be like 5. So we can store up to 15 different bottles. Now we shall be able to communicate to SIMIO that if you exit server 1, you stay 5 minutes in the refrigerator. If you exit server 2, you stay 7 minutes. How do you do that? Intuitively, you probably think, okay, we define a state variable. So we define a state variable, so if you exit server 1, the state variable gets the number 1, and if you exit server 2, you get number 2. And then these two numbers are used to define, and we don't know yet how much time do you stay in the refrigerator. However, you want the state variable to be attached to the entity and not to be a general state of the system. So that gas cylinder, number 24, will have the same state as gas cylinder 25, just because when 25 transits into filled nitrogen, it automatically assigns that particular number to all entities. To label a specific entity with a number, we need to click on Model Entity in the navigation panel and go under the Definition ribbon. Of course, you need to stop the model before you do any change, but importantly, when you stop the model, you go under Model Entity on the navigation panel, under Definition, and you define a state for the model entity. This is called gas type. Gas type could become 1 or 2 depending on where that particular entity is going to transit, and this is remain attached as a label to every entity, and it's gonna change. So now we take server 1 fill oxygen, and we change the state variable, which is called model entity dot gas type, the one you see now on screen I'm selecting here, and we assign it a number of 1. So this is exactly the entity that is transiting. It's not a general property of a model. It's not that all entities will get that particular state. And for the second one, instead, we do the same process. After processing, we attach to this particular state value of 2. So are we sure that this works correctly, where we can visualize this number under each and every entity? So if you go on click on gas cylinder on the entity, you go down to the animation and to dynamic label text. you can just select model entity.gas type, or essentially copy and paste that. And when you run the model, you see that below every entity there is a small number. And the small number says where the entity is coming from. 2 means that is coming from server 2 is full of nitrogen, and 1 that is full of oxygen. Now it's time to tell the refrigerator that if you are number 1, you get 5 minutes, and number 2, 7 minutes. How do you do that? So you go under the data ribbon, and I already selected what is called the lookup table. The lookup table is very simple. It has an x variable and an epsilon variable. So the x is gonna be this particular number that we get from transiting the server, and epsilon is assigned automatically to the particular refrigerator, in this case to the particular rack that you are manipulating. So in order to add this information to the rack, you go under self-storage time, you select the lookup table, which is called very simply lookup table 1, and inside the square parentheses, you write the expression model entity.gas type. Just take care now to take away the small artifacts left and right of the expression, and now the self-storage time will be defined by where the particular gas cylinder is coming from. So you add a sink, you connect the refrigerator to the sink, and now the model should work pretty well. So lookup tables are very, very helpful, particularly when you have this type of situations where you have storages where stuff needs to be there for different amount of times depending on what they contain, for instance, or what they are made of. So that's all for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.